All right, welcome to another episode of Five Questions. Today I've got Tessej in, you said Rotterdam?
Yes,
Awesome, good. You're excited, you get your questions lined up?
I do.
Good, fire away.
All right, the first one. If Source and our inner being loves us unconditionally, why do we as humans have this urge to get the approval of our family and loved ones?
Yeah, so I think for most people aren't aware of that unconditional love that's coming from Source. I mean, most people don't even realize or recognize that Source exists, right? So most people believe in religion and they believe in God or they believe in something. But I think most people don't have the awareness of how loved and how supported we are from that non-physical, right? And when it comes from seeking out that love and that approval from our parents, our siblings, our friends, the reason we seek those things out is because we kind of have like a void that we're trying to fill. So somebody who's confident and knows their self-worth and knows that they're good enough, they don't need to go out and find that validation from other people because they just inherently know that they are good enough, right? On the flip side, somebody who feels like they're not good enough are going to look for that validation from other people to compensate for that negative emotion that they're carrying. So by default, that's how humans operate. So typically what happens is after we're born, our mind is erased. We don't know about Source. We don't know about the non-physical. We don't know how loved we are, how worthy we are, how good enough we are. And then we pick up our programming from our experiences and the way our parents treat us and the family dynamics, all of that stuff. So as we grow up, we pick up these emotional wounds, we'll call them. And then from those emotional wounds, we create our desires, right? So somebody who's got an emotional wound of being bullied might feel like they're not good enough. So then they look for that external validation to compensate for that not good enoughness. And when it comes to self-help and inner work, the key to being good enough and to feel good enough isn't to always boost the positive, because if you're seeking the good enough, it really means you feel like you're not good enough, right? And sure, you can go and you can boost the positive and do affirmations and feel good enough, but the next day when you wake up, that momentum's probably subsided and you're back down in the not good enough. So what I tell people is the key for consistently feeling good enough is simply by eliminating the resistance. Once you understand that not good enough doesn't make sense, you never have to boost it because you're naturally in the positive vibration. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. And
It
I know
does.
that was a lot, but
Yeah, it does bring me to the next question. How do you deal with disappointment? Because, for example, today I got news of a business opportunity, but without a financial profit. And I was visualizing, I was knowing, I had faith, I was already celebrating with champagne.
yeah.
um, and then it didn't happen.
Okay. It's not that it didn't happen. It's
Yes,
that it hasn't happened yet. Go
yes.
on.
But how do you release the fact that time got in the way and you might wanted it too quickly?
So time doesn't get in the way. You know what does get in the way?
No.
Vibration, right? So here's what you want to do. So disappointment is a negative emotion just like any other negative emotion. And that negative emotion is always fueled by a perspective. So every single negative emotion that we carry has an underlying perspective that's fueling it. So Abraham Hicks says emotions are our guidance system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So most people think, okay, it's guiding me to just choose a better thought. But a more advanced or deeper way to look at it is saying, what is that thought that's creating this negative emotion? And if you can identify that thought and reframe it and shift yourself out of it, the negative emotion goes away. That's what we call the belief tree process. So
Mhm.
if I ask you the question, what's the first thing that pops in your mind when I say, I feel disappointed because,
Because it didn't happen
okay,
as I planned.
okay. I love that you added as I planned on the end of that.
Yeah, it popped up my head.
And that's, I'm pretty sure that came from your inner being,
Yeah.
right? So just because it didn't happen as I planned, does it still mean it wasn't the best possible outcome for you?
Probably. Only the future me knows, I think.
Only your inner being knows, because only your inner being sees it all, right?
Yeah.
So Abraham Hicks doesn't say it's the path of no resistance, it's the path of least resistance, right? So two things. One, that circumstance happened the way it did because in some way you were a vibrational match to that outcome. Okay. But that's okay. That's perfectly fine. Because the reason that circumstance occurred was to show you something about your vibration that you're practicing so that you can shift that, have that expansion, and become an even better vibrational match to the outcome that you really want.
Okay.
Right? So a lot of people, when they experience contrast like that, their mind automatically goes to, I screwed up, I did something wrong, my vibration wasn't at the right place, yada, yada. And it's never that, right? It's always, this is part of the story. This is part of the unfolding. And the more you can accept it, the more you can be okay with it, the more you can not push against it and look at that circumstance and say, okay, what part of me was responsible for this outcome? Was it a belief that I was practicing? Was it an expectation? Was it a dominant negative emotion? Oh, it was a dominant negative emotion or a belief that things never work out for me. Okay, well, that's a good thing to clear, right? So then you clear it, you work through it, you have a mindset shift. Now you're a brand new person at a brand new vibration that's going to attract a different outcome. And there's no such thing as a closed door. So if your inner being can deliver an opportunity to you,
Mm-hmm.
and that opportunity doesn't pan out the way you wanted it to, you never miss the boat. Your inner being has the ability to bring you 1,000 more of that opportunity.
So it's okay to let go of the need to be in control and breathe and let go.
Not only is it okay, but the outcome that your inner being will deliver to you from that vibration will be an outcome that exceeds your expectations.
All right. Interesting few days ahead.
How does that feel when I say that?
um, it feels good because it confirms this little voice in my head.
Yeah?
And I left today. So I think I was meant to hear this. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is it that you really want? What's this outcome that you really want?
I'm looking at my avatars now. They're behind the camera.
Yeah?
And the outcome I want for now is that I will get this promotion with the financial benefits while working less hours.
Good. And V 2.0 you, who has that and is experiencing that, how is she different than current version of you? How does she feel differently? How does she think differently? What actions is she taking differently? What's the biggest difference between you and her?
She would be proud of expressing herself about the financial part of the promotion
Yeah.
instead of having doubts that things are not working out.
Okay. And that's what you want to work through is those doubts, right? You want to be that version of you now, even if physical reality is not mirroring that back to you
Yes. Yes. This is really cool.
yet. Awesome.
All right. Next one.
Yeah, go for it.
How do you open up for the unexpected? As I am a person who loves to plan, time is precious, and as we all work a lot, I used to work even more, and I'm heading to working less and having more time to spend money and have fun and be with the loved ones. How do you leave time, maybe, or moments for the universe to bring you the unexpected?
So do you fear the unexpected?
No, it's more being eager for it.
Okay, so you feel like you're eager for the unexpected.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's a good place to be,
Yes.
right? So what's your question exactly? So that I make sure I
Just
can get this right.
listening. It's that I'm having this fear that because I plan everything, there won't be any space for the unexpected.
And do you feel like you need to plan everything?
I do. I don't know why, but I
Okay.
do.
So what's the first thing that pops in your mind when I say, I've got to plan everything out because if I don't,
I lose time.
okay, so the belief is if I don't plan, then I won't make optimal use of my time.
Yes.
Okay. And how do you define optimal use of your time? Is it based on how much you get done? Is it
Yes.
based on how much pleasure you're experiencing?
Oh, that's a good question. I think how much I get done.
Okay. And how do you think your inner being would measure successful use of time?
Pleasure.
Pleasure. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think for you, it's about taking a step back and redefining success. Is
Hmm.
success how much I get done in a day, or is success how much pleasure can I experience in a day?
I hope one day it will be only pleasure.
Well, it can be, right? Depending on your pleasure practice. So, do you drink coffee?
Yeah.
Okay. And when you drink your coffee, do you take the time to really, what's the word that I'm looking for? To really enjoy that cup of coffee, or do you just drink it on your run while you're trying to get 10 other things done at the same time?
No, my coffee is really my sacred moment. I have a cookie with it. It has
Good.
to have a cookie with it. And if I'm in a hurry, I prefer not to have my coffee.
Good. So, you take pleasure in your coffee.
Yes.
Good. And do you know why you take pleasure in your coffee?
Because it's really good and everything that is good needs to be enjoyed.
Yes. And because you set your intent to slow down and enjoy your coffee.
That is correct.
So, what do you think would happen if for the next 2 weeks you decided to live your entire life with that same slow intent to enjoy whatever it is that's in front of you, regardless of what that thing is?
That sounds a bit scary.
Because if you could do that for a couple of weeks, I can almost guarantee it would completely change your life.
I'll try.
And that feels unsafe because,
You're not in control.
and I believe that I'm not in control because,
Life happens to you.
and life happens regardless of whether you plan or don't, right?
Yes, that's true.
And would you agree that this would be called surrendering?
Yes, but that sounds really scary to me.
So when you surrender, you're not giving up control, you're giving into the control that you already have, which is being exercised by your inner being.
Okay.
So you can control, or you can let your inner being control. Who do you think would be the better controller?
Oh, I have an angel and a devil on top of me at the moment. Yeah, I think my inner being, but
Okay. And it's not safe to let go. It's not safe to surrender because if I do,
I have a lot of flashbacks of childhood trauma at the moment
okay,
where I was not in control. And maybe that's exactly why I need to be in control all the time, maybe. Yeah.
Absolutely. This is not an uncommon perception belief. This is something that quite a few people practice, and it absolutely comes from traumas. And one of the things that I explain to clients that I work with when this comes up is that those circumstances did not occur because you surrendered or let go of control. These circumstances occurred because you were in some way a vibrational match to those circumstances, right? It wasn't the surrender that allowed it. It was in some way the vibration. Even if you felt like you were a gazillion% in control, from that vibration, it still would have happened. Make sense?
Makes sense. Is it weird to think that because you were a child, you were able to match to the vibrations of the adults around you?
I would say when you're in a room filled with people, if all of those people, whether they're family members or different, if all of those people are practicing the vibration of anger, then it's very easy to default into that same vibration of anger, right? Or anxiety. Most people who have anxiety, it's typically either a trauma that occurred that created that anxiety, or a family member that they grew up with who had anxiety, and kind of the child picked up on those habits that the parent had, right? Being an empath is another one. So a lot of people who grow up in an environment where one of the parents is maybe bipolar, maybe emotionally or physically abusive, where that child feels like they don't know when they are or aren't safe, then
Mm-hmm.
what happens is that child has this kind of walking on eggshell syndrome where they're always like waiting for the other shoe to drop or waiting for something to go wrong. So what happens is those people typically develop being an empath because as a child, they're always emotionally trying to feel out where that parent was to know whether they were safe or not. And once they grow up and once they move out, that becomes a default behavior where everybody you're around, you're emotionally trying to feel out where they're at. And then by tuning into everybody else's emotions, we have a tendency to kind of tune into them and practice them as well.
Interesting.
So that was a very long answer to a simple question, but the answer is yes. We, especially the people who are around frequently, we do have tendencies to pick up what they have going on.
All right. Cool.
Cool.
One more?
Yeah, keep going. We still got another 10 minutes.
How do you, this one I'm really curious about, how to lose the fear of losing your goal after a long period of all these little synchronicities and happy moments regarding your goal as if you were already there?
Okay. So in the context of law of attraction, what is important? Is it the goal that's important, or is it the journey to the goal that's important?
I believe the journey too, because that is what brings you joy. But in the same time, I am experiencing that in these moments of synchronicities, like very rapidly, one behind another, like I'm like, okay, universe, whoa, what is about to happen next? And then I feel like, oh dear, now I jinxed it.
No, you can't jinx it. So to me, it sounds like you're in alignment, that you're flowing. To me, it sounds like you're doing everything perfectly, right? So it's about understanding that everything that you're going to experience is a co-creation between you and your inner being, okay? And your inner being is infinitely powerful, right? So anything that you experience is something that's co-created with your inner being, who is unconditionally loving, who can create any circumstance. So whatever circumstance you find yourself in, it has to be for your highest good because it was co-created by Source. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah. So all you need to do is just keep milking the pleasure of the journey. And the more you're focused on enjoying the journey, the happier you are, the more pleasure you're taking in the journey, the less you're going to care about the destination, right?
That is true.
Do you care what manifests over here if you're already in pleasure all the time?
No, because it's a lot of fun to see all these small things appearing right in front of you.
Exactly. And do you know when all of those things show up?
Sorry?
Do you know what allows those things to show up?
It's my excitement, my joy, my eagerness to see what else is coming.
When you're having so much fun that you don't care when those things show up, that's when they typically show up.
Yeah, I really hope I can keep it going.
Yeah, don't hope, choose.
I choose to.
Decide, I'm going to keep it going, right?
Yeah,
I'm going to find a way to milk my entire day the same way I do when I drink my coffee, right? I'm going to practice that, and I'm going to just enjoy the journey for what the journey is and see where it takes me.
awesome.
Awesome. Got one more question for me? I think we can do one more.
I do. This one is a bit different because I'm all high on the flying disc, as they say, and I'm having a lot of fun and I'm feeling joyous and exciting. And then I get a message from a loved one, a close loved one, completely different. And then you go down in your vibration because it's completely different than everything you would have expected to receive from someone loved. What do you do?
So in the collective, I did a call. It was a 90-minute call about how to stop other people from lowering your vibe, or how to stop family members from lowering your vibe, which is a very common question. So you basically have three options. Option one is go live in a cave. Option two is control everybody around you so they're being the person you need them to be so that you can maintain your alignment. And I don't know which is more realistic, number one or number two. And then number three, which is the only real option, is investigate what you have going on, what perspectives you're practicing that pulls you down. Because it's never really about them and their behavior. Their behavior is the trigger, but it's the perspectives that we're choosing that create the negative emotions that pull us down. So, for example, somebody who has a lot of emotional baggage of not good enough, all it takes is for somebody to say one little thing and it really triggers that not good enoughness, and they might be feeling that strongly for a day or two, right? Somebody else who feels really, really confident, like The Rock, he might have somebody come up to him and say, "Hey, Rock, you suck. You're the worst actor ever." And he's so confident that it doesn't bother him at all, right? Because he doesn't have that in his emotional baggage, I'm assuming. So it's always more difficult when it's family members because we put more weight on what family members say.
Yeah.
But if you've got a family member that's weighing you down, that's pulling you down, then it's about asking yourself, how are they making me feel? What is it triggering inside of me? And then working through that inside of yourself. And if you can identify and clear that, then that person will no longer trigger you in that way. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah. And I know it's easier said than done for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But if you can do an attraction point audit and identify what your dominant negative emotions are, and then work through it and release it, with the right reframing work, you can get to a place where that person doesn't create wobble for you anymore.
Interesting. I think I've put it in this little Pandora box.
Yeah.
Put it away. And now every time this person says something, it pops open. So I have to do some investigation, I think.
And do you know what emotion that triggers? Is it not good enough? Is it lack of control? Is it unloved? Is it abandoned? Can you tell what emotion it is that they trigger?
A little confronting to say this on camera, but I think it is unworthiness.
Yeah, and that's not good enough is the most common one that I see. And unworthy is right up along there.
Yeah.
So I can almost guarantee you that over half of the people that watch this video can relate, right? And what you need to do is you need to ask yourself, I feel unworthy because, or what thought am I thinking that makes me feel unworthy, right? And if that person's making you feel unworthy, there's some reframing work you can do around that, right?
Yeah.
So just because that person doesn't see your worthiness doesn't mean that it's not there.
No.
Of course not, right? I know you're worthy. Your inner being knows you're worthy. I bet you've got a lot of friends that say that you're worthy,
True.
right? Just because that person has emotional baggage that doesn't allow them to express things in a positive way, maybe for them, treating you as if you're unworthy is a form of validation for them, right? Maybe that's how they know how to uplift themselves. Maybe they're afraid to give you positive validation. You have no idea what's going on in that person's mind to make you feel unworthy. But the important thing for you to recognize is the way they're treating you has nothing to do with you, and it's all about them.
That's true.
Make sense?
Makes sense. So it's like not changing focus, but take away they do. My inner being loves the shit out of me.
Totally.
All
Right?
right, cool.
And if I say you're worthy and that person says you're unworthy, well, who's right and who's wrong?
You are.
Right? You get to choose,
Yeah.
right? In my book, I talk about how emotions are a point of view, right? Not good enough, that's just a point of view. I can decide I'm not good enough, I can decide I'm good enough, right? Every
Yeah.
negative emotion is a point of view, and as a creator, you're powerful enough to choose the point of views that serve you best.
Yes.
Make sense? Awesome.
Makes sense. Cool.
Good. This was a great chat. I think I've given you a lot of stuff to chew on.
You did. My
Awesome.
mind is all going. That was really
Awesome.
nice. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Good. Send me an update after a couple of days or a week and let me know how you're feeling, how you're making out.
Will do.
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks for playing.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.